The Level Up Leadership podcast is hosted by Mia Shecker and Joe Green. Join them as they discuss topics such as mentoring, networking, well-being in the workplace, and much more. Remember, transcripts for every episode are available at experian.com/levelup. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Level Up Leadership podcast, where today we're joined by Experian's Chief Operating Officer, Craig Boundy. It's great to have you here today, Craig. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's great to be here.
That's great to hear. So let's kick off the conversation by starting at the beginning of your career and finding out a little bit about where it all started for you. So can you give us a little bit of a flavour of your first steps into the working world and how it kind of progressed from there?
So, my very first steps were as a teenager delivering newspapers. I then worked in a home store, Texas Home Care, for anybody old enough in England to remember it, for Americans and others watching, more like a Home Depot type store. I worked on the cash till all through my high school time and through my university time. But my first real foray into the world of work was whilst I was at university. I did an internship, or a practicum, as you say in German, living in Munich in Germany, working for BMW's motorbike division. I left there, went back to university, from the final year of my degree, finished and started work for British Telecom, again, initially living in Germany. So one of the themes that will come through my working life is I've lived and worked all over the world and really enjoyed so much from the cultural diversity that I've got there. I think it's made me a better leader.
That's amazing, Craig. You've truly worked everywhere across the world. Do you have any insights on how you kind of learn culturally how other people work, how you adapt when you're working in a different place?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of great tips I give people for, when you live somewhere else and working there and enjoying everything about life. First is you have to be very present in the moment. And so at the most simplistic, for example, people ask me where home is. And I've always told my children, home is wherever mum and dad are. Like, home's just where we are. Like, home's not a physical place for me. Home's more of a kind of spiritual place, if you like. So that's really important, because if you are going to be somewhere else, you need to be centered, grounded, and able to fully enjoy it and absorb all of the best that you can out of it. To adjust well needs a high degree of empathy. I like languages. And so one of the things that I enjoy is learning about the different languages. I speak German, I speak French, I speak reasonable Spanish. I can have a go at a few other languages, as well as English, obviously. My American accent is terrible, despite I've lived in the US for a long time. And even here, I live in California, and even here I have to remember often that words are different. I was asking somebody last night about what in England we call a tracksuit. I think more like a sweatsuit here, or warm-ups in America. And we couldn't really even connect on exactly what the word is. So those things matter much more so when you're in the workplace, because there is nuance to the way that we use language, subtlety to the way that we use language, and importance in the choice of words that we have, particularly for leaders. Then you have to remember that a large number of Experian colleagues, English is not their first language. It's hard to understand how tiring that is, and the incredible skill that our colleagues all over the world show with their English. I just earlier this morning was talking to Valdemir Bertola, who leads our Brazilian business. He works all the time in a language that's not his mother tongue and is phenomenal in his grasp of the language and ability to communicate with such subtlety and effectiveness. But I also know and remember how tiring it is for him. So all of the small things to the large things, when you live and work somewhere that's not where you were born and where you grew up, you need to be graceful to yourself and learn to adjust to, but also really suck every drop of the learning out of.
A lot of respect for anyone that can speak more than one language. I can only speak English. I was trying to learn Spanish over lockdown, but that hasn't been successful at all. But in your experience of working in so many different locations across the world, has there been anything that you've picked up along the way that you still use within your leadership style now?
Yeah, I lived in India for a while and worked there. in Bangalore, and I've worked in Chennai as well there. And one of the things that for me, that was one place where some of the cultural norms in the working place are very different. And there were a couple of things that I learned then. I was back in London and I was going to a meeting, and I had, I was giving out some reward prizes, some recognition prizes. And at the time, it's a few years ago, at the time the prizes were iPods. And a rather naive person to me in the London office said, "Oh gosh, you better take the iPods with you." And I said, "Well, why?" And they said, "Well, where are you going to get the iPods?" I said, "I'm going to go to the Apple store." "Where do you think I'm going to get the iPods?" And it was sort of this, "Oh, they have an Apple store in Bangalore?" I'm like, "Yes, they have an Apple store in Bangalore." Like, these kind of norms that people accept are very different than how the reality is. But at the same time, the cultural adjustments that you have to make sure that you really understand and learn from really matter. I was at a dinner with a client in Hong Kong, I don't know, 15 years ago, and the food was being passed around, and as me as a sort of senior, it was up to me to distribute some of the food. And they serve this very delicious looking flat fish, very flat with a bone on top. And I went to flip the fish over so that I could pass the fish out more easily. And there was utter gasps at this point when I went to do it. Sighs, looks of horror. So I sort of stopped, gingerly put the fish back down again, and explained to me that this was incredibly bad luck, and it was seen as basically knocking over some family member's fishing boat if I were to flip the fish like this. And just those sensitivities and norms and understanding of just how easily and accidentally you can cause offense when working in a different culture, but also how great the learnings are and how much you need to show empathy and connection and understanding all the time.
Was it always your intention to work in different locations? Did you always have a plan to kind of work outside of the UK? Because am I right in saying that you were born in South London, and then you've worked in so many different locations? Was it always the intention?
It wasn't really. I was born in southeast of London and grew up there. I'm the first member of my family to go to university and get a degree. I never really had a plan. I know you're not supposed to say it on something like this, but I'll just be totally honest. I never really had a plan. I'm probably still figuring out what I'm going to do when I grow up. I love what I do. I love the people I work with. I've just been very lucky to find myself in places when I've had these, incredible and really exciting experiences. And if that matches something that you enjoy, it's probably something you're good at.
Craig, you recently moved into a global role as our Chief Operating Officer. Can we talk a little bit about that transition? Because previously you were responsible for North America, and so now you're really getting to engage a lot with that passion that you have for a global setting.
Yes, I've been in Experian just over 11 years now, and so originally I ran the UK business. And then for 8 years, I ran the US business. So I've run two large parts of the company, and two of the best jobs I've ever done. And then, I'm very lucky and honored when Kerry Williams, my predecessor, decided that he was going to retire, that Brian Cassin and the Mike Rogers and the board asked me to fill the big shoes of Kerry in our organization. It gives me a really interesting remit. Because I get to look across the entire world and all of our businesses. Also gives me a very exciting, interesting leadership challenge, which is the people that I have work for me are really very senior, very experienced, very capable executives. People running all the large parts of our organization. And so you have to learn how to manage and lead in a different way and find ways to add value. Like, when I ran the US, I ran the UK, I ran the day-to-day operations. Now there are people that do those jobs. Jennifer Schultz runs the US, Josie Luis Rossi runs the UK. These are two incredibly experienced, very capable executives who know absolutely what they're doing and are phenomenally successful. So they need something different from me. They need a different kind of leadership. They need guidance. Maybe they need counsel. sometimes they need challenge. And so I find I spend my time differently doing this job, albeit it's a very exciting and very enjoyable job.
How did you feel taking over from Kerry Williams? Because obviously, he's done a phenomenal job over the years. Do you get imposter syndrome? Do you get nervous about going into that role? How did you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, we probably all get imposter syndrome, right? You sort of wake up. I think most people probably wake up thinking, "Gosh, am I really doing this job?" And Kerry's incredibly successful. He's did that job for 8 years, presided over the most successful period in Experian's history. I'm also lucky. He's a great friend and a great counselor, and so I talk to him all of the time, seek his advice, his guidance, and so I'm very lucky that he's still around to help me, learn the ropes and figure out how to get the balance right. Like the more senior you get in your career, the more jobs are really about balance. The balance of what you spend your time doing, which battles you choose to fight, which things you choose to push, why you choose to do them. And he's a great guide. So I felt somewhere between very excited and suitably anxious, I think, taking over.
That definitely, imposter syndrome, like you said, is something that we all can kind of struggle with. I'm curious, if you have any advice for people who are afraid to, make that next decision, or, are afraid of, oh, am I good enough, or am I ready for this next step in my career? How would you help them level up?
I think, it's a very trite answer, but you have to just get on with it. You have to just go for it. The world isn't going to stop spinning the next day. You're going to mess some things up. Probably the best thing that people need to do in their careers is mess some things up, like get some things wrong. Once you've really got some things wrong, you've gone home, you realize that the world doesn't stop spinning. It's still okay the next day. You come back to work, you work harder, you try more, you get more effective. I think you start to get a bit more comfortable. The question is never, will anything go wrong? It's, will the things that go wrong not matter that much? Like that's always the question, really, because things are going to go wrong. It's how you handle them, how you cope with them, how you make sure that the right things go wrong. That sounds a bit of an oxymoron, but like the things that matter less go wrong, and the things that matter more go right. And so, honestly, I know we're kind of talking about how do you level up. I think the answer is you probably just got to go for it.
So you kind of mentioned failure in that last bit. Failure is I think for everyone is a scary thing. No one wants to fail, but it's your advice. If things are going to go wrong and you learn from them, is that kind of how you've seen stuff through your career?
Nobody ever gets promoted to the top of organizations if you haven't failed. Like that's just true. And so things always go wrong. Not just will or might or occasionally go wrong. Things go wrong all the time. And you're going to have some small failures and you're going to have some spectacular failures. Your ability to cope and motivate yourself and have the resilience to keep going the next day. What really matters is what you do the morning after a big failure. That's really what matters. The night of, you can sulk a bit and moan and do whatever it is. But the next day, what do you do in the morning? Get up early, go back to work harder. It's the only answer. And that's how you build resilience.
Craig, you talked about motivation, and I'm just curious, what's the motivation when it comes to working at Experian? What gets you up in the morning? What excites you?
I think one of the things that's so enjoyable about working at Experian are the incredible people that I get to work with all over the world. But there's even more to it than that. Like if you think fundamentally about our business and what it is that we do, the journey that we've been on all over the world to help with financial inclusion is something that matters at large to society. And whether it's the products that we launch like Experian Go and Experian Boost, whether it's the outreach work that we have through things like United for Financial Health, or whether it's just the simple stories of individuals that we help, whether sometimes some of the great videos of Experian employees or people that I see in client consumer testimonials, like the difference that we make to people all over the world and their financial circumstances is what gets me out of bed. How can you not want to be part of that journey? How can you not think we can do something that makes a real impact on the world? And you know what? I get to do it at the same time with people I love working with in a company that I love working for. I mean, that's a pretty good mix.
You mentioned Experian Boost. I see that purple cow right next to you. I can tell that you're proud of what we do, and rightfully so. I love working at Experian.
Yes, anybody that's watching on the video, when I moved from being head of the US business to my current job, I think the team was scouring around to find a suitable gift, and they commissioned a local artist to make this sculpture of the purple cow that's from our TV commercials here in the US. And so it sits there as a good reminder of the difference that we can make in society, but also the slightly light-hearted part of Experian's culture that makes it fun too.
Curiously, did you ever meet John Cena, Craig, who's in the advert?
I've never met him in person,
That's
which is probably a really good thing, because I'm about 5'7" and he's rather gigantic. So I think it'll be very intimidating. But a lot of our teams have met him and work with him directly, because we do a lot of the creative work in-house. And I actually think he's been a fantastic spokesperson. They have at various stages got him to record videos. He sent a very funny video from one of the commercial shoots to me, when I was moving on to be the group COO, and asking if he could be in our commercials all over the world. So he's quite a character. I think he's a great spokesperson for us.
Yeah, completely agree. So for a lot of people that are going to be watching, listening into the podcast, we're going to have some aspiring leaders kind of listening in. A lot of people might want to know, what does a typical day look like for a chief operating officer? What time are we on at the moment, Craig, of recording? We're about 6 o'clock.
It's 7:30 in the morning here in California. So I as I said, I live on the west coast of the US, and so time zone wise, I start quite early because I work with the teams in Brazil, in the UK, as well as here in the US. And so I probably typically start work at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. That's probably when my sort of scheduled calendar starts. I try not to block my calendar too much, because I like executives that work with me to be able to get hold of me when they need me. Because remember, these are, as I said to you earlier, these are very skillful, very capable people who sometimes need help and advice and counsel and just somebody to bounce ideas off. They don't need micromanaging every day. So I don't have a very routine, scheduled calendar. There are some things of routine that I have to do that are important. Governance meetings. I'm a main board director, so I have board meetings to attend. I have results presentations, those kind of things to do. But typically my day will start somewhere around 5:30 or 6 a.m., probably go till about 6 p.m., be a series of 30-minute increments often, maybe an hour increments, but normally 30-minute increments of kind of different topics and different subjects all the way through the day. So the mental agility that you need is very high. Like, you need to be able to process quickly. You need to be able to change topic very quickly, because 1 minute I'm talking to our team in Sao Paulo, the next minute I'm recording a video with you, the next minute I'm talking to our team in the UK, and on the day kind of cycles, which is part of what makes it great fun, by the way. I think there are some important disciplines that you learn in doing that. One is, and I think a lot of people inside our company that work with me know this, anytime you come to a meeting with me, I've always read the material in advance. So there's always material. I've always read it in advance, because I think, first of all, if people have been respectful enough to produce material, I should be respectful enough to read it. Secondly, I don't want to waste the time of turning pages. So if you produce some material, a summary, a review, this is what we want to talk about, we then start the meeting with the second meeting. We don't have to lay the facts out. We know the facts. we then debate and discuss and work through the issue together. So that's probably what a typical day for me looks like. If it's like last night, then I hang out with my family for a bit. I have 2 teenage sons. We'll probably eat, and then this would be quite a common occurrence. They're either doing homework, studying, doing sports practice, whatever. I'm probably reading ahead for the following day, split in between being a professional Uber driver for them. And then, sometimes I'll get calls like last night. Joe Manor, who runs our global technology organization, texted me about 8:00 last night. Hey, I know it's getting to evening a bit. I didn't get to this today. I'm working on this evening. Do you mind if I just give you a call? So he called me at home last night. We chat for about 20 minutes. He could probably hear the clanking in the background, which is while I was loading the dishwasher. So, you kind of end up in the middle of all of this, that knowing that there isn't really this sense of work-life balance. There's just life. And so you have to live life, and you have to do everything in life. You have to be present for your family and your loved ones, and you have to do a great job at work. And so, like many of the decisions, we all end up balancing those all of the time. So I've got pretty good over the years at balancing and multitasking.
So it sounds like you need to be pretty skilled to be doing that, Craig. I'm
a lot of practice.
I bet. You get up incredibly early in the morning, and I wonder whether you have any kind. I've become obsessed with morning routines to help my productivity. I exercise in the morning. Do you have any kind of things that you do to kind of set yourself up for the day, or is it kind of wake up and kind of go straight into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite common, by the way, on the West Coast for people to get up quite early, just because of the time zone in the US. In the US, being that's 3 hours earlier than the East Coast, so that's not uncommon. By the time you start meetings at 5:30, I don't really want to do my exercise before I start. Although I'm like you, I like to exercise in the morning, but I'm not getting up at 4:00 in the morning to exercise. That's a little bit early. So I just tend to get up, clear up any work from overnight. Like I look at the messages, I look at the news, I look at the stock price, I look at the exchange rate, I kind of check in on those. I check in on any family things. I do my early stages of meetings. Quite often what I do is I work from home for the first couple of hours of the day, and then I like to come to the office, so I come in, but I live very near. And so I kind of use the hybrid really very much to my advantage, and I find like I get a lot of benefit out of it. And so that's a really useful thing to me. Often then my one probably routine is, whilst I'm driving from home to the office, I phone my parents in London and check in on them. So that's probably in my morning routine. But I'm a big fan of hybrid working. I find for people with schedules like mine, it's really, really very helpful. And I can have a good setup to work at home and a good setup to work in the office. Makes me very productive.
I love what you said about, instead of work-life balance, we just have life. And you have your priorities both personally and professionally, and then you make sure that you are able to attend to those. I was curious if you have any other hobbies or things that you like to do outside of work that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I love sports, and so I don't spend as much time playing sports as I like. I stopped playing competitive football for non-Americans or soccer for Americans 2 years ago, and so I was still doing that up to 2 years ago. I like to play tennis. I'm normally involved in some kind of fitness challenge, normally somewhere through Experian going on, so that takes up a lot of my time. I'm a big family person, and so I said I have 2 sons, and so I spend a decent amount of time with them. I do my share of all things domestic too. So I do some of the cooking. I'm mostly in charge of laundry. I'm pretty good at that. And so I like everybody else, right? I have a kind of real life where I live in the real world, and I get involved in all parts of family life, and I enjoy that a lot.
Sounds good. So going back to your Chief Operating Officer role, COO, what does success look like for you, Craig? What's the goal for you?
Our success is about, comes at different levels, right? You can measure it simplistically through progression of the stock price or the value of the company. Like, how much success are we building into Experian? But it cuts deeper than that. The quality of the organizational culture that we build is something I think we're very proud of, rightly so, because all of us are part of that. And I think the level of satisfaction people feel at work really matters, because then they do a better job. At the same time, our ability to impact people all over the world on the journey for financial inclusion matters. And so when you marry those two things together, the purpose of the company contributes to the continued success. And what I think we're doing is building a company that's part of the fabric of society in the countries that we work in. And the more that we're able to do that, the more we're able to support and enable the economies and the societies that we're part of, the more successful we're going to be. And that's really where success comes down to for me.
Do you have any examples of some exciting stuff that are going on within the regions at the moment?
I mean, we could talk for hours. We could talk for hours. There's such incredible things going on all over the world. In Brazil, our team there have this incredible Limpa Nome fair, which translates, I think, literally as clean your name, but allows people that are struggling with debts, with our help, to settle those debts in an effective manner. And if you've ever seen any of the videos of that, like the millions of people that participate, the hours and hours they queue and wait to be part of this thing that we're helping them do that changes their lives, is really quite incredible. At the same time, our team there have this great charity kind of community outreach program called Transform Say. I think it means like transform yourself, that helps people develop and change their circumstances and build their careers. You could come over to our amazing business in the UK and see how all the way through the COVID pandemic and the most difficult lockdowns, which were quite tough in the UK relatively to some parts of the world, how we were able to help people cope and learn and get through that and survive and get the best out of their circumstances. The things that we're helping people do now with the cost of living crisis, and then the incredible culture that we're building there, from the charity outreach to some of the fun Christmas parties I saw at the weekend, to some of the giving work that they're able to do. And then here in the US, our products like Experian Go and Experian Boost make a huge difference to society. I always tell the story, very early on with Experian Boost, we had, and our whole credit education journey, we had one customer, his name's Lawrence, and at the start of his journey, they had one car loan. There's two adults and children in the family, but they had one car loan. It's all they could afford, and a high interest rate. After a couple of years of working with us, they were able to cut the interest rate down to such a level that they were able to take a second car loan out. Now 2 of them in the family are able to work, and that changes fundamentally the income, and that makes a generational difference for the children. So from the simplistic of great culture in our organization to exciting products to community outreach to making a difference to society, like I could talk with passion for hours, far too long for this podcast, about the incredible thing Experian people do all over the world, and we barely scratch the surface. I just went to a couple of our bigger markets because it's easier, but I could go to any one of our markets and give you equivalent lists of those things. It's something we should all be really proud of.
I mean, that passion's really coming across, Craig. And one of the questions I had for you was, how do you kind of get the same passion amongst your workforce that you have? Is there anything that you do as a leader to kind of really get people excited about what we are doing, particularly when it comes to financial inclusion across the regions?
It's almost a circular question, right? I take source of my energy from the people that I work with. I find a lot of this begins with the people that we bring into the company and the environment that we set and the tone that we set. But I'm challenged every day by people in our company to find ways to help us do better. It's not me going to them saying, hey, we need to do more of this. It's them coming to me saying, there's this opportunity here, or I've got this idea here, or could you help me with that? That's one of the things that make me so incredibly proud. And for aspiring leaders that are listening here, if you want to figure out what your personal success is, here's a litmus test you can know when you've been successful, is People below you organizationally push you to be better. And I'll give you a little shorthand for that. Here's one of the most silly things people ever say in organizations. People say, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. This is a very silly thing to say. It's not that I don't like solutions, but if you have a solution, why do you need to bring it to me? Why don't you just get on and implement the solution? If you have a problem that you're really stuck, you should come to me because I should be there to help. Like organizational pyramids are sort of designed upside down, right? You always put the most senior person at the top and the most junior people at the bottom. Well, if you really think about it, you should put customers at the top and then the people that do the real work and then the managers at the bottom. So really organizational dynamics are upside down in the way that impetus, drive, energy should come through the organization. And that's something that all aspiring leaders need to learn how to develop. You've got to ask yourself one question. Why does that person want to work for me? Not, how do I get them to do what I want? Or some of these more basic ideas that people have. Why do they want to work for me? And when you have a good answer for that, and when they tell you, I want to work for you, then you know as an aspiring leader, you're going to be successful.
That's fantastic, Craig. And, as someone personally who's just kind of beginning in her career, like that kind of advice is something that is extremely helpful. Do you have any advice in terms of building a network of, you have the people that you want to work with, but how do you take that first step in creating a circle that you trust?
So I think there are a couple of things that are true about this. For everybody, building a network starts as an uncomfortable journey. Get over it. There's the truth, right? You're going to have to do some things. You're going to think, I really don't want to do that. Here's the honest, nobody wants to do it. So get over it. Just get on with it. There's just no easy way through it. You just got to push through. But the second thing is remember that the diversity is not only diversity of how you identify, of your ethnic background, your sexual identity, your physical ability, your mental situation. Like diversity is more than that. Diversity is in the breadth of perspective. And so as you build a network, don't surround your network with everybody who's the same as you. Build into your network the challenge. If you're not debating, discussing, arguing out, changing your mind, realizing you're wrong as much as you're right, you're not going to be a good leader. That's key in building the network. Build that challenge in, that permission to challenge. And here's another tip for aspiring leaders. The most powerful person in the room is not the person who's right. The most powerful person in the room is the person who can admit they're wrong publicly and still be in charge. I kind of challenge everybody to think on that. Can you say, you were right, I was wrong, but still be in charge at the end of it? You can do it. How you do it, you find your own way to do that. But knowing that, that's who the most powerful person. That person is unstoppable because you're still in charge, you're still in control, you're still leading, even when you're wrong, as well as when you're right. You don't always have to be the smartest. You don't always have to be the most capable. You don't always have to be right. You have to be the best leader. And so when you think at the beginning of your journey of creating that network, build in diversity from the very beginning.
That's fantastic, and definitely something that I'll be keeping in mind. And thank you. So you dropped so much wisdom on us, and this is just a great conversation, Craig. We actually have a fun little activity for the final moment, something that we've been doing with our previous conversations. We have some rapid fire questions for you, so sure. Feel free to answer freely. So, if you could turn into any animal, what would you choose?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I'm not my youngest son really loves animals, and he's always really good. He comes up with really creative answers to this sort of question. I don't know. I'm not a great animal lover. I'm not a very good swimmer, so maybe something that swims very well would be good. Maybe something like a dolphin.
That's a good answer. If you could only watch one of the following for the rest of your life, what would it be? Basketball, American football, or real football?
So definitely wouldn't be American football. That's my least favorite of the two. I have two teams that I have a great passion for. My Oklahoma City Thunder, which is an NBA basketball team, and Manchester City in football or soccer. I think it'd be football or soccer, whichever one you want to call it.
I know you've done your fair share of traveling, but if you could live anywhere else in the world, where would you go?
If I could live anywhere else, I don't know. I've never been to Japan, and I'd really like to go to Japan. It's just somewhere between my wife and I, we traveled an awful lot. It's just somewhere we've never been. And so that's on my list of places to go in the next couple of years.
And one final question, Craig. Can you tell us one interesting fact about yourself that no one really knows?
Oh, gosh. I think part of the funny thing about doing jobs like this is I think most everybody seems to know an awful lot about you, and so it's kind of hard to keep an awful lot hidden that people don't know about me, because normally you'd say like I speak these different languages, but I think a lot of people know that because I've lived and enjoyed working all over the world. I'm a family person. I think most people know that about me. So I'm a pretty open book. I'm not sure there's a lot hidden that people don't know.
There you go. That'll do. Craig, it's been absolutely amazing speaking to you today. Thank you for taking the time to have this conversation. There's so much that we can take and the listeners can take from what you've spoken about today. So yeah, thank you for doing that for us.
Hey, it was my absolute pleasure.
Cheers, Craig.
This has been the Level Up Leadership Podcast with Mia Shecker and Joe Green. If you enjoyed the insights from this episode, please consider leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on social media and use the hashtag LevelUpPodcast. See you next time.